Hello everyone. Analyzing NIO, Tesla, SPY, and QQQ charts. NIO's dip might be countered by bullish divergence and a positive Deutsche Bank rating. Ongoing trend analysis is crucial for a potential midweek recovery. I'm also to give you guys my price predictions for NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the QQQ and break down what these charts are suggesting for us. Before I break anything down about the bullish news that came out for NIO, what's happening with the share price, and what should you be observing? NIO was down 2.64% for the day on Friday, once again continuing to drop. But despite the drop, if you consider NIO's chart, there was a low that was made right here in the 13.8 area. Then we made a lower low around this 13.2 area, then another lower low at 12.55. So 3 lower lows were made on NIO, and we talk about the chart. The MACD has been making higher lows. The MACD is curling upwards, forming a bullish divergence. So the MACD has a triple bullish divergence developing, and the RSI actually has a double bullish divergence. Not a triple, but a double on the RSI. So why on the RSI? Because it was very oversold with an RSI of about 16. When NIO was around this 13.2 area, NIO goes all the way down to 12.5. But the RSI makes a higher low, right? The low point was previously at 16, and it then increased to approximately 24. So the RSI is making higher lows, MACD is making higher lows, price is making lower lows on NIO, forming a positive divergence, which tells me there should be a bounce coming relatively soon, most likely. Now, additionally, it's worth noting that when you analyze SPY's charts, the same thing has been developing. We actually have a quadruple or a triple bullish divergence. Not a quadruple, a triple on the MACD. It's worth noting that this thing is moving upward in trend, while the price has been steadily declining. Same thing with the RSI. RSI has been making higher highs, while the price has been making lower lows. And this tells me that there's a good chance bounce on SPY, but it really depends on if we could get enough buyers around that 444 level. Same thing with all these other stocks out there. However, focusing on NIO, we have this news that came out right here. Motivated by greater sense of urgency, Deutsche Bank has raised its estimate on NIO ahead of the Q2 earnings. So that's some good news for NIO. They're now raising the price target to about $17 from $13, and they're one of the first banks that came out. And they're giving NIO a buy rating, saying, buy NIO down here. It's a good buy. It has strong fundamentals. And they're saying this because even though deliveries were not that strong for the second quarter, they are quite confident that NIO's overall earnings, their guidance should be relatively strong. And they think that because of strong guidance, this could help them continue to push. They also mentioned that there's going to be a big improvement. The margins are going to improve in the third quarter, reaching double digits, and they believe that in the fourth quarter they should exceed 15%. They also mentioned a projected substantial increase of around 10,000 units for the year 2023. It's about 180,000. That's a plus 47% year over the year. So they're bullish on NIO, right? They did mention that there could be some supply chain limitations, but they're still excited about the company. They're still very optimistic, and they're still very, very bullish. So that's a good sign for them. Now, as far as the economic data goes, we do have some consumer inflationary expectations coming out 1.5 hours after the market opens. And then in terms of earnings, we have like Jinko, the Home Depot going on for Tuesday, Target, Walmart. Lots of retail for the week, but nothing too crazy. Add on to this, let me just mention that the volume on NIO has been about like 54 million, a little bit lower than average. So it's not really dropping on high volume. There's not insane selling. And once again, Deutsche Bank is giving NIO a buy rating. NIO, the price per ratio for it has dropped quite a bit, but it's trying to bounce here. And finally, analyzing the daily seasonality, Mondays tend to be a little bit weaker than Tuesdays, but Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be a lot stronger for NIO. So I'm going to be discuss that very carefully. And finally, the short interest has been declining, which is a good sign for NIO. It's not as heavily shorted as before. So what's the analysis of the charts? Basically, for example, I made a video about this earlier, about how we had this confluence of support from the previous high right here, acting as support. This is what's resistance acting as support. We had this trend line, which is the previous support line, which acted as support, and then we had support from the wedge. So could the market continue to sink? It could if we get another bad piece of news. I'm always open to that possibility. So far, major catalysts to cause SPY to sink much harder. And so far, it's getting bought up around this 444 area. So there are buyers stepping in and observing the current trend. With the triple bullish divergence, I think the ODS favor OK, open to any possibility depending on the news. But I think the OBS favors SPY bouncing, maybe retesting 444 and then trying to get a bounce and then trying to make its way up to about 448. I think that's very probable, and that's what I think is going to happen over the next 2 days. It coming down to 444, discussing some buyers again shopping a bit, then getting a push up to 448. I think that's very likely. That's what I am predicting. I think for Tesla, the same thing or something very similar is going to happen. Tesla is going to come down, retest 240. Now, it also depends on the news for Tesla, because sometimes it could be a little different. If 238 breaks on Tesla, like 235 before it bounces, or it might just try to base around 240. It could be either one of those. I think it's gonna either retest 240, then bounce, or come down to like 238, 235, and then bounce. One of those two should be key, and then once it bounces, it's gonna push all the way back up to about 250 in my opinion. In the later days of this week, I'm leaning towards either a little bit more dropping before a bounce, or it could just bounce from here. And I think it's very probable for Tesla. For the triple Q, I think it's going to try to base around 365 before this thing tries to bounce. I think that's very probable as well, with the triple bullish divergence developing on it. I think it might have a quadruple. It technically has a quadruple bullish divergence actually, which is pretty crazy. But we're just going to focus on the triple one still. It's like a triple bullish divergence, still nice. So in my opinion, I think there's a good chance that the triple Q is going to try to retest 365 base around it and try to balance and push its way up to 368 and then 370. I find that very probable. And then for NIO in particular, it depends on the news. I think I have a chart drawn out here for NIO in particular. But basically, when looking at NIO, this thing, just like SPY and many others, it has a bullish falling wedge developing on it. So it's eventually going to break out. Once the breakout comes, we're going to discuss this thing, make an attempt to get back up to $14. Deutsche Bank gave NIO a buy rating, so that's a good catalyst that could help NIO. And this looks like it could be formed like an inverse head and shoulders. So it really depends on if NIO could get a break out of that wedge. I think there's a good chance it's going to happen soon. So if you're bearish, I mean, if it breaks below 12.5 because of some bad news, then it could sink a little lower. That is a possibility. But my gut tells me the most probable outcome is going to be it comes down a little bit, retests like 12.75, but it's going to try to base around this 12.7 to 12.5 area. Then it's going to get a nice bounce either by the end of Monday. If not by Tuesday, a nice bounce for NIO. I think it's going to make its way back up to this imbalance right here around 13.24. And if that breaks, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of a retest of about almost 14, a little bit under 14, around like 13.7 to 13.8, all the way up there. I think that's very probable. I think it could be forming like an inverse head and shoulders like structure. So I'm going to be looking for a bounce on you, and I find that very probable going into tomorrow, Tuesday. Okay, so that's my technical perspective. I think it should bounce very soon, and tomorrow's events will reveal the outcome. I strongly recommend careful observation of your technical indicators. If hypothetically something else were to happen, just focus on this wedge pattern. We're looking for a possible breakout. My intuition suggests it's coming soon. So be vigilant with this NIO wedge. It seems like a bounce could be in the works, and we'll monitor how this situation unfolds. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stock predictions and market insights. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Happy investing and see you in the next video.